Welcome to Uncovered. It's Wednesday. I'm Anthony. He's Ron. Together we uncover the MAGA propaganda that is not covered by the corporate and mainstream media. Hopefully you're saying that with me now, as it forms the opening of every show, and I think it really sums up what we're all about here. Ron, there's a lot happening. I think maybe we should start with Elon Musk, who is not happy with Trump. He's not happy with the MAGA Republicans. He's not happy about the big, beautiful bill because he thinks that it defies the whole point of Doge, which was to make savings. And of course, the big, beautiful bill only is going to cost the country a fortune more and grow the deficit. Tell us about what's going on.
Well, I mean, what we always have known about Trump his whole life, not just his first term as president, but really his whole life, is that he's never really cared about debt. You know, I mean, he exploded the deficit last time he was president with his budget. So he doesn't care. So his priority is the tax cuts. He wants to get through the tax cuts, and he doesn't want to do any entitlement cuts because that costs votes. And so, you know, he's always like, no cuts in Medicaid. You know, meanwhile, the Republicans in Congress are doing some cuts. But I think he has reined them in, especially the more conservative members, and kept the cuts to a minimum while including all these huge tax cuts, which makes the deficit just go crazy. And I think that Musk has been grumbling about that because Musk's whereas Trump's priority is tax cuts and Mike Johnson's priority is hanging on to the House, so not doing huge spending cuts, not doing as much as what the conservatives want. Musk's priority is the debt and deficit. And so, you know, he's looking at this thing, which explodes the deficit. And despite Mike Johnson lying about that and Donald Trump lying about that and claiming that it reduces the deficit, Musk knows very well that this does the exact opposite. And so it can't, you know, although he's been grumbling about it and griping about it, it really came as a shock, I think, to everyone when he came out yesterday and just completely burned the whole house down.
Yeah.
And you know, keep in mind, Musk is a very different personality than Trump. Trump will do these things, these rage tweets, and then, you know, 3 hours later, he's on to something else. And it's almost like he forgot the rage tweet. You know, Musk is not like that. When Musk gets on something, he doesn't stop. He literally, he's like Laura Loomer. He's like Nancy Mace. When they get on a topic, they will just 24/7 relentlessly stay on it until it's concluded. And so all day. And so not only did he do the one drop the nuclear bomb, which Trump is reportedly very upset about, and Mike Johnson is too. Not only did he drop that yesterday, but all day throughout the day today, it's just been one post after another. Call your senators, call your congressmen, tell them vote against this bill. So, and I don't expect that to stop anytime soon.
Let's take a look at the posting that he did last night. I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it. So that was his post on X last night. And then this morning he followed up.
The only people who voted for it were Republicans.
Right, exactly. You know? Some of whom who didn't read it, but we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's have a look at the posting, or one of the postings this morning. Call your senator, call your congressman. Bankrupting America is not okay. Kill the bill. Let me ask you a question, though, because the conspiracy theorists amongst us,
I can't wait to hear this.
Well, we thought that, you know, or we have been reporting that Doge was never really about saving money, right? Mm-hmm. It was a way for him to get in there. It was a way for him to steal data, potentially. It was him. You see what I mean?
I agree with that.
So it's not really a conspiracy, but the reporting flies in the face.
More to get their people in and careerists out.
So I was never really of the opinion that he cared that much about the deficit or the debt. And so, I think it was all just a maneuver to basically for him to be able to run the country, which is what he did for the first 4 or 5 months. So if that's the case, why is he doing this now? You see, I'm smelling I smell a rat. I'm not entirely convinced that this is what we think it is.
There's a lot of valid theories out there. There's definitely one theory that he was fired. He was fired by Trump and told to leave and didn't want to leave, but they made the show in the Oval Office that he wanted to leave and that this was being done amicably. But there's a theory that Trump fired him and this is his revenge. So that's entirely plausible. But I think kind of two things can be true. I think that Musk has talked about debt and deficits for a long time. And I do think that he does, because his solution is to cut entitlements. I mean, this is what he's wanted to do for a long time. Social Security, Medicare, not just Medicare, but Medicaid. I mean, he wants to cut these government programs across the board. He wants to raise the retirement age for Social Security. There's a lot of things that he has wanted to cut for a long time. So I think two things are true. I think that he wanted to go in and use Doge to kind of radically change the government and eliminate programs he didn't like USAID, Department of Education, all these other things, and a lot of the regulatory agencies that regulate his businesses. Yes, he wanted to go in and eviscerate and dismantle those. But I also think he expected and wanted Congress to cut the deficit. But I think the way that they sold it was that Doge was going to cut the deficit. And I don't think that was ever really Musk's plan. I think Musk's plan was to use Doge to transform the government ideologically. And I think he thought that Mike Johnson and Donald Trump were going to do the heavy lifting on the budget, but found out rather quickly that they really don't care about debt. They never have. They talk about it, but they really don't care. They've never cared.
And this is, I think you've just confirmed my new theory, which is what you've said, is that this is revenge for being fired.
Could be.
Because he knew that Donald Trump added trillions of dollars to the deficit when he was in office the first time. I mean, that is widely reported, unless he was only in his, in his information silo and kind of missed out on that information. But I'm very much of the opinion that all of these MAGA Republicans, as you just said, they care nothing for debt. They live in debt. They are highly leveraged. Musk is highly leveraged. He may be the richest man in the world, but he is highly leveraged. And this is how they live, and this is how some people are good with that. Obviously people that make the most money invariably are the ones who take the most risks. So I'm not entirely convinced that what he's doing now is anything other than revenge for being fired. As I'm looking at it now, I'm like, yeah, think about it. Trump was getting pissed that Musk was getting all the attention. There was those weird scenes in the Oval Office with the dark MAGA hat and the kid on the shoulders and all the press that went with that. Trump hated the headlines. Trump's like, okay, we'll call it 3 months or 100 days or whatever you want to say was his tenure, and then he's done. And then this is how he's responding.
But remember, that's not what he said when he went in there. Whenever he was asked, how long are you going to stay?
Yeah,
he said he was talking about a couple years.
Well, he said as long as it takes
till the midterms, as long as it takes, right?
Right.
So yeah, all of a sudden it's like, oh, Elon's leaving in a couple weeks. Now I believe that was because. I still believe that it was because the Tesla board was going to remove him as CEO. And that's why he changed his mind and woke up and decided running Tesla was a lot more important than Doge.
Right. Well, because he's getting paid at Tesla.
It finances everything that he does, including his Mars stuff.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, we also have to factor in the drug use. I mean, behaving erratically from the drugs and all of that stuff. I mean, that also can factor in here as well. So yeah, we don't really know. I mean, the interesting thing here is though that going forward now, what is the relationship here? He's already said he's not going to spend any more money in the midterms, but then he also posted last night that he was going to mobilize an effort to vote out all the Republicans who are supporting this bill. I mean, he's all over the place right now. And I think as Democrats, you have to just sit back and go, hey, let the boys fight here. And I'm sort of pouring gasoline on the fire as much as I can in my own little sphere, knowing that a lot of these MAGA influencers follow me. I'm trying to kind of, throw things here because, but the interesting thing is Trump has not said a word. Trump has been mum's the word. And I noticed on Fox and Friends this morning, which is a show that Donald Trump watches every single morning, they were urging him not to attack Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And how they did it is they use this reverse psychology on him. They treat him like a child.
Yeah.
And they said, Brian Kilmeade says, I really believe that Donald Trump is very smart right now by not attacking Elon and not responding. And he's doing right. So I think that they're trying very hard to keep the relationship together and not have it break up because that would be bad for their movement. But I don't think that Trump is going to be able to hold off for very much longer. He might not post about it on Truth Social, but he's going to get asked about it. He's been in hiding for the last 5 days. I don't know why. We're speculating that he's either sick or ill or something's going on because for 5 days he's basically disappeared. But I think eventually he's going to be in front of some reporters, and of course this is going to be their first question. And I don't think he's going to be able to resist taking a shot at Musk. And then we'll see how Musk responds to that.
Ultimately, two narcissists don't make a right.
Egomaniacs.
Right? It's like two magnets fighting against each other.
This was never going to work. It was never going to work.
No. It was never going to work, Ron.
It was a marriage of convenience temporarily.
Yeah, exactly. Melania has form on that. You should probably ask her. Is there any truth in the story? I can't remember where I heard it or read it that Musk had got into a fight with Mnuchin or someone.
No, Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary.
That's right. Yes, he's the new guy.
Yeah.
What is that a story that we can cover, or is that just rumor?
No. I think that's true. I think that's been backed up by a number of sources. I want to say, somebody inside the Trump administration went on record about it and confirmed it. Right. I don't remember who it was, but yeah, I that's been confirmed by multiple sources.
Because Musk did have a bruise and claimed it was his
wasn't
kid.
It. No, that wasn't it though. They got into their shoving match about a week before that, where they were screaming and yelling in each other's face.
Right.
And the allegation is that Musk pushed Bessent a couple of times.
Yeah.
I absolutely believe that. And that's been confirmed by multiple inside sources in the White House. But the black eye thing, yeah, I mean, his story on of course he shows up to this last meeting high as a freaking kite,
his eyes were rolling in his head
rolling around, high as hell. And Trump that he doesn't like that. I mean,
no.
He doesn't like people that can't control.
Yeah, he's a very controlled person. Yeah.
Yeah, he likes everything to be presented a certain way. Right. And when Musk rolls in there and, rolling around him, the kid running around, and, he doesn't like that from the beginning. And then Musk shows up with a black eye, which is what the hell's going on with that?
Yeah.
And then his story is I told my kid to punch me in the face and he did it.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard of a lot of black eye stories over the years. Yeah. I also, was a lawyer involved in a couple thousand domestic violence cases. So I've heard a black eye story you can possibly imagine, other than what the obvious thing is. And his story was pretty poor. In fact, if I was his defense lawyer, I would have said, no, we're not going with that story. You go home, think about this some more, and come back, and we'll talk about a different story, because that seems pretty preposterous. Now, let me just throw this out there, okay? The day before that meeting, the story broke that Stephen Miller's wife, Katie Miller,
yes, I know where this is going,
is leaving with Elon Musk. To go work as his personal assistant. And we know his proclivity for procreation with women in his orbit. And so, I mean, there's some speculation did anybody check Stephen Miller's knuckles to see if he's got any bruising on his left fist? So I don't know, maybe that's not true.
These allegations
either,
are salacious,
you
but
never know.
we must make the point that they are purely speculative.
We are wildly speculating, which is what we do best.
Yeah. you speak for yourself. I also need to correct you on something because I don't want the people to go mad in the comments down below. And I think we need to not use the phrase entitlements. I am told that this is like a Republican phrase because if you think about Social Security,
it's
Medicare,
actually a legal term.
Right.
It's actually a legal term used by the Supreme Court.
But the argument is that people have paid into the system in their taxes, and therefore it's not an entitlement. It is what they are entitled to.
Yeah, I know. Yes, I'm well aware that a lot of people get very worked up about choices of words.
Yes.
I'm very well aware of that.
I know you are.
I use it in the context of the courts because I'm a lawyer, and the courts ruled a long time, used that term, the Supreme Court did.
Right.
Use that term in the context of their entitlements, meaning that they can't be arbitrarily taken away from you. You are entitled to them, so they're different than another kind of a government benefit. So it's actually a legal term, although I understand politically maybe.
Well, you may be a lawyer. I'm a diplomat in this moment. That's all.
So that's where I'm coming from on it. Yeah,
understood. Steve Bannon had something to say on his podcast about the deficit and the all this stuff. Let's have a quick look at him.
Want to stop the dead bomb, Elon, and the guys on Capitol Hill? You're going to have to raise taxes. The wealthy can't get an extension of the tax cut. That's got to go to the middle class and the working class. That has to be extended and has to be made permanent. At 40%, the top bracket are 40%, you pick them. That's got to go to 39, go back to 30, snap back to 39.5% and go to 40%. The math simply doesn't work.
It's always interesting to kind of see where Steve Bannon sits, like which camp he's in, right? Because he obviously has the ear of the president, I presume, but then he's also he's a bit of a rebel and, a pseudo-intellectual and kind of strategist. So he's almost out on his own. He doesn't have an official capacity in the regime. What's your take on his position here?
Yeah, he is definitely like the philosophical leader of the MAGA movement in terms of like, I guess you could say intellectual. I mean, he is not stupid. He's a smart guy. Yeah. So if there's like sort of like William F. Buckley was sort of the founding father of modern conservatism, which is now basically dead. Steve Bannon is the founding father of MAGA, the MAGA philosophy,
the MAGA Republican movement.
He literally created Donald Trump's platform for him in 2015 to run for president. Trump didn't have any ideas of his own. He had very few thoughts in his head. But Bannon was really the architect of the platform of what MAGA is. And it is populist nationalism. It's not conservatism. It's a populist nationalist movement. And so
with some libertarianism thrown in there as well.
Sure. And so Bannon has floated this a few times, which is like, hey, I like all the Trump tax cuts, but what Bannon has always said is like, you can do the middle class tax cuts, lower class tax cuts, and upper class tax cuts, no problem, but you can't also do no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security. So the choice is you have to choose, you have to take one thing away and if you want to do the other thing. And what Bannon has always argued is for the long-term goals of the MAGA movement, which is to capture the working class, right? That's the long-term goal is that it's a smarter thing to do the no tax on tips, the no tax on overtime and Social Security, and not give tax breaks to the wealthy. And that actually trades off very well. If you don't give the wealthy the tax cuts and you raise the rates to 40% like Bannon wants to do, that offsets the tax cuts, the other ones that we talk about. So it's actually very workable. And Donald Trump, how you know that Bannon has Trump's ear is that Donald Trump actually has floated that too a couple of times. The problem is when Donald Trump first mentioned that a couple months ago, both the House Republicans and the Senate Republicans said, absolutely not. We are not raising taxes on the wealthy. So they shot it down immediately. So now what you have Bannon out there again today after Musk said what he said. And he's saying, what Bannon is saying is, no, the smartest way for us to do this is not to go after Social Security or Medicaid or Medicare. It's to raise taxes on the wealthy. But he's very much at odds with most of the Republicans in Congress.
Well, I was going to say that raising taxes on the wealthy was Kamala Harris's remit. That is how she had promised to bring revenue into the Treasury, and all Donald Trump has is tariffs. So these are the two options, and this is why I find Bannon interesting as an individual, because he actually, some of his thinking is kind of aligned with Democrats.
If you cherry pick some of it, yeah. I mean, so the reason why I think that that's important is because see, the Republican Party has convinced a lot of their working class voters that tax cuts for the wealthy will somehow benefit them, right?
Yeah.
Trickle down economics, right? And here you have Bannon saying, no, these guys are lying to you. So it's actually very useful for me to highlight when Bannon says things like this and put that in front of the Republican voters. Which is because
he is, weirdly, with his 2 shirts and 3 pens, a man of the people. And he really does want the people to prosper, it seems. I mean, he's made plenty of money himself. So he kind of comes to the base and connects with the base. But Trump doesn't. Trump just uses the base as his audience and to rinse them. So you've got, multiple individuals with different ideologies all converging. Let's talk about Mike Johnson for a second, though, because he's now this kind of little piggy in the middle, isn't he? Having to react to this. Let's have a quick look.
Yeah, let me say this. It's very disappointing. Okay, I've come to consider Elon a good friend. He's obviously a very intelligent person, and he's done a lot of great work. With all due respect, my friend Elon is terribly wrong about the one big beautiful bill.
So what did Elon say about it? He said, I'm sorry, but I just can't stand it anymore. This massive, outrageous, pork-filled congressional spending bill is a disgusting abomination. Shame on those who voted for it. You know you did wrong. You know it.
Tell us how you really feel.
Leaves the White House and then pulls the pin on the grenade.
Yeah.
Whew,
brutal.
Yeah. There's so much there. I just want to say as an aside that I do find it fascinating that people still refer to Elon as a highly intelligent person. And there's a lot of these people who kind of speak in this gobbledygook. Peter Thiel is another one. They speak in this pseudo-intellectual language. And because the media doesn't have much of a brain, they kind of tolerate it and they put it on air. Jordan Peterson does the same thing. And so, people listen, that's interesting. It's because you cannot understand what they're talking about, right? I mean, he's wearing a T-shirt now that says Occupy Mars. That's how nuts Elon Musk is.
Every day.
Right.
He wears the same shirt almost every day.
Exactly. But people, like Trump and Mike Johnson, they just kind of humor these pseudo-intellectuals because they think, they must be smarter than me because they're richer than me and they're more successful. And actually the whole thing is just gibberish.
I mean, you just think about Mike Johnson. He's just got to be almost like ready to jump off a bridge right now. Because think about how hard it was for him to get this thing passed, right? I mean, it passed by one vote with like blood on the floor, with like Donald Trump threatening to primary everybody and twisting arms and beating people over the head. And you have all these like Freedom Caucus members who ended up voting for it, but immediately like said, I hate this bill and I didn't want to vote for it. And I'm hoping that the Senate makes big changes to it because, all they do is they vote on it. And then if the Senate makes any changes to it, then it has to go back to the House and they have to vote on it again. And so, Johnson just wanted to get it to the Senate and hope and pray everything will work out. And he barely got it there. And literally like 5 minutes after this is passed, it's all coming apart. I mean, the Senate, John Thune said, immediately was like, we're not doing what the House just did. We're not even voting for what they passed. We're coming up with our own bill. And Mike Johnson's like, what do you mean? I just worked so hard to get this through the House, and you're telling me that you're going to ignore this? And then, they're talking about in the Senate, well, we're not going to do the SALT stuff, which I've talked about extensively on the show already, which divides the Republicans in the northern states and the southern states. Thune is already saying like, well, we're probably going to make major changes to the SALT deal that the House worked out. And then you have like Mike Lawler, who's like the leader of the SALT Republicans from New York, who freaked out yesterday and was like, what do you mean they're going to if you make any changes to the SALT agreement, I'm out. So I mean, I don't know how this is. I don't see how this is going to play out. So you got Musk out here yelling and screaming, telling Republican voters to call their members of Congress and tell them to vote against the bill. That you got Republican House members saying they're not going to vote for the bill when it comes back from the Senate. And then, of course, you got the Senate bitterly divided. People like Rand Paul, Ron Johnson, and Rick Scott and others who are said, Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, who have said they won't vote for it how it is right now. So it's just like a huge mess. So when Elon does this, it was already a big problem. So when Elon does this, it just completely unravels everything in one shot. And you can see that in Mike Johnson's face and hear it in his voice.
For the people that say, I don't follow politics, they're really missing out, because this is politics. We just don't know what is around the corner. And even though things feel quite doomsday at the moment, it really, because of Trump controlling all the branches and, it's just a struggle. It's like an uphill fight right now. But the great thing about politics is things can turn on a dime. And nobody would have predicted Elon Musk coming out against the bill and coming out against Trump in this way just a couple of weeks ago. And so, it is like a soap opera that could be beneficial to the Democrats in the long run. Marjorie Taylor Greene is not happy with the bill either. In fact, not only has she announced that she didn't know about the AI provision that's in there, but she also admitted that she didn't actually read it. Full transparency, she posted. I did not know about this section on pages 278 to 279 of the OBBB that strips states of the right to make laws or regulate AI for 10 years. I'm adamantly opposed to this, and it's a violation of states' rights, and I would have voted no if I'd known this was in there. We have no idea what AI will be capable of in the next 10 years, and giving it free rein and tying states' hands is potentially dangerous. This needs to be stripped out in the Senate. When the OBBB comes back to the House for approval after Senate changes, I will not vote for it with this in it. I'll just say quickly that, of course, they don't want to regulate AI. AI is very much part of Trump's plans. The surveillance plan, the Golden Dome plan, the immigration plan of, snatching people off the streets, the AI algorithms, even Doge. AI is built into all of this. If you were to start to kind of investigate it or regulate it, it would really highlight how the government is misusing AI to effectively break the law.
Yep. This is something that Musk wanted in. So, that her coming out with this was a shocker, another shocker.
Yeah.
And this came like at the same time Elon's making his post saying he's against it. Marge then comes over the top with this thing, which is, this is another thing that several Republicans have now said that they will not, who have already voted for it, who have said they weren't aware that this was in there, and they're now opposed to it. They want that taken out. And they're saying the Senate better take that out or they're not going to vote for it. So here's yet another thing that is bothering a handful of Republicans and causing them to vote against this bill. But, Republicans always said that they wanted single subject bills. How is this AI provision in the budget? Like, that should be a totally separate standalone bill that should be voted up or down.
But it's a tactic, isn't it?
And they slipped it in here.
By
Yeah, they
having
slipped it
a
in
big,
here.
beautiful bill as opposed to a small, beautiful
it's a
bill,
big
you
disaster.
can crowbar stuff in knowing that people like Marjorie are not going to read it because
And
most
that's
of
what
them do
happened.
not read.
And Mike Johnson also, look, one of the reasons why they voted out Kevin McCarthy as speaker was because this was a complaint that they had about Pelosi, that Pelosi would dump these huge bills on their desk and they'd call for a vote in like 12 hours, right? And they would always complain that they didn't have time to read it, and et cetera, et cetera. So when Kevin McCarthy came in, he promised that when he ran for speaker, he promised that he was going to do away with that. He was going to end that. And he promised that everyone was going to get 72 hours to read a bill before it was voted on. He didn't do that. And that was one of the reasons why they voted him out. And one of the reasons why Mike Johnson won is because he pledged that he would stick with that. He absolutely would not do this. And he did it on this. He did not give them 72 hours. He called for the vote just like Pelosi always did, rather quickly. Because, on these things, the longer you wait, the more this
more
happens.
scrutiny.
People find things they don't like, and it's herding cats. You're trying to get them out the door and keep everyone together. And the longer these things fester, the more likely it is it's going to come apart. So now this is a new problem for them. And remember, they haven't passed the budget in 2.5 years. They took over Congress in 2022. They're still operating under Nancy Pelosi's budget.
Yeah, I know.
2.5 years later, they keep doing CRs. The last CR they did was through September. And you see why now. You see why they did a 6-month continuing resolution, because they knew that this was going to be a huge mess trying to get their budget passed. And here it's even worse than they expected.
The other thing that has made this bill is really bad timing for this bill is the news on the financials, the jobs report, businesses as well, report and their reports. So we've got this news: private sector hiring rose by just 37,000 in May, the lowest in more than 2 years, according to the ADP. This is, another example of how you kind of need to time these things well. The jobs report as well is probably worth mentioning, isn't it? I mean, it's appalling for Trump.
Look, this is Trump's entire and Mike Johnson's entire argument for the bill, right? So what they're saying, and you hear them talk about complaining about the CBO, wanting dynamic scoring. Their entire argument is that all these people who are saying that this budget is going to explode the deficit, like Elon, are not factoring in that when we pass all these tax cuts and we make all these trade deals, the economy is going to explode and it's going to be booming and all this new revenue is going to be coming in, and that's going to take care of the problem. So it's just sort of like rosy scenario. Hey, we're going to win the World Series next year, so let's start shopping for rings.
And we should remind people, in Trump's first 4 years, he made these same arguments, and nothing came to fruition.
Right. So it's like a hope and a prayer. It's like, pass this thing that, yes, right now looks like it's going to create this massive deficit, but hope that economic growth is going to be so good that everything's going to be fine. The problem is, yes, what just happened? The GDP numbers just came in for the first quarter. We had negative growth.
Yeah.
The growth projections are coming down. Numerous different organizations are estimating economic growth to be much lower than was originally anticipated. So not only does that fly in the face of Trump's entire argument, but it actually makes the problem even worse, because the numbers that they're using right now, the CBO is using right now, are what their economic growth projections were at the beginning of the year, but they're being revised downward.
Right. And which
these
could trigger a
tariffs are
recession.
only making it worse.
Yeah.
So it's a perfect storm. If this passed
is
in its current form, it's a perfect debt storm is what it is.
And this is why Donald Trump is begging Powell to lower interest rates, because that really
Right.
is his only mechanism for making this work in his favor. ADP
Correct.
number out, too late. Powell must now lower the rate. He is unbelievable. Europe has lowered 9 times. Trump posted on Truth Social 8:21 this morning. This is another example, to me anyway, and maybe you can tell me, I have no doubt that Trump has no interest in balancing the American budget. His only interest is enriching himself and the very wealthy, corporations, by reducing taxes and effectively just saying that trickle-down economics is going to take care of everybody else. But he has no real interest. And of course, the thing about trickle-down economics is if you follow the trickle up, who are the people making the money? It's him and his wealthy friends.
And part and parcel of that is stripping out all government regulations on businesses.
Exactly, which makes more profit. That's all it does. Gutting the EPA just makes more profit for the polluters and everything else. Same with food standards and
all that.
And AI, as we've discussed.
So
So
you can make more profit when all those things are gone.
of course.
But you kill people in the process.
How much money do these companies need? I mean,
that's the
I
question.
just don't understand from a moral perspective. People like Trump with that kind of financial mentality, who they care nothing for society and for people and for poverty and for all of the things that America is struggling with and against. Credit card debt is through the roof. People live hand to mouth. People live paycheck to paycheck, and all of those cliches because they're based in truth. And Trump is relying entirely on trickle-down economics, which every major economist has agreed is bullshit, basically.
So yeah, I mean, job numbers are terrible, right? They came out this morning, and that's what the ADP numbers were. So he's complaining about the job numbers being way down. Obviously, economic growth projections continue to be revised down. So what you said is correct. There's really only 3 ways to sort of turn around economic growth. One would be massive tax cuts. One would be foreign investment, which he's been trying to do, get trillions of dollars invested into the United States from other countries. That would be another
there's no deals. There's no
way.
deals. Yeah.
And then the third way is to cut interest rates and pump money and credit into the economy that way.
Yeah.
But Powell is sitting there going, he said this a few times, and he just had a meeting with Trump this week because Trump called him into the Oval Office, demanded
Which
a
should
meeting.
never happen.
Which is very unusual.
Supposed to be completely separate.
Very unusual. And Powell said afterwards, he issued a statement. He said, he said, Mr. Trump did most of the talking. I listened, and I simply told him that we were going to do what was in the best interest of the American economy without regard to political pressure or influence of any kind. And what Powell is saying is like, look, all the metrics are out there to lower interest rates, and Europe has lowered interest rates, which is what Trump is complaining about, except for tariffs are the problem because tariffs are inflationary. So even though a number of these other economic indicators suggest we should lower interest rates, we're holding off doing that because of the inflationary pressures associated with tariffs. There you go.
He just wants to get into that cycle that kind of, brought about the subprime mortgage crash, where you just over leverage, you lend. There's no regulation. I mean, banking regulation, we didn't even mention. That's something that they're cutting completely as well. And the very wealthy get so rich in the meantime. They're just coining it in during those periods, and then they print money, and before you know it, it's just a fake economy. It's basically a fake economy, and that's the type of economy that Trump and his wealthy benefactors are after, because they know that they will reap the benefits in the short term. But those types of economies, those stimulus economies, they do nothing for working people.
And by the way, you know what else is bad for inflation and economic growth? Deporting migrants.
Right. Who's going to pick the fruit?
Because you're stripping the labor from low cost labor from construction sites, from restaurants, from agriculture. and that causes inflation. That's going to cause prices to go up, and it's going to cause the economic growth to go down. And so that's another factor that, is not even being talked about much in the context of the economy.
Yes.
But it should be, because it's going to dramatically, if they do the deportation numbers of what they've talked about, which they haven't been able to do yet,
3,000 arrests
but
a
they're
day.
well on their way to like trying to do that.
Yeah.
If they're successful in that and they strip out millions of workers from this economy right now, it's going to just make it even that much worse.
This is why you don't have rich people in leadership positions. The super rich. I mean, Trump couldn't even get his head around the word groceries the other day. When things become difficult for people, where you have to choose, in England we have a phrase, heating or eating, is used to describe relative poverty. People choosing to heat their home or put food on the table. Here, I don't really hear much about that. I always hear about the middle classes, but I never really hear about the working poor or the poor. It's almost like in America, like nobody wants to admit that they might be poor, certainly when it comes to politicians. And so it's always talking about the middle classes. So something I found kind of interesting culturally when I came here.
They don't ever come up with a platform to appeal to the working poor.
No, not a thing. No, and I think that's linked to the American dream, and it's a whole other conversation. But the point here is that if you keep bringing people in who are so wealthy, who have never needed or have any empathy for what it's like to actually have a job, and you cannot weather the storm. When the prices go up, you cannot weather the storm. Trump, if the prices went up, he could still afford to eat and heat his home. And that really is the very difference.
Yeah. So, so what happened this week, switching over to the deportations, because
Yes.
I think that's one of our topics, and it's because it's related.
Yes.
And so what do we know happened last week with the reporting was Stephen Miller summoned to the White House all 50 of the regional ICE directors from around the country.
Yeah.
Summoned them.
The Gestapo.
Gave them like a few days notice that they had to be in DC. And the reporting on this, because some of the people who were in that meeting have now talked to reporters about it, was that he absolutely undressed them. He read them the riot act. He was yelling and screaming at them. And some of them said, about the numbers, and they wanted 3,000 arrests of migrants per day. And what they were saying was, well, we've just been focused on arresting migrants that have criminal records, who have committed some sort of crime or accused of crime or something.
Yeah.
That's what you told us to focus on. That's what Trump is saying from the White House that we're supposed to be doing. And that's only so many. That's not going to get you the numbers you're looking for. And that's when Miller came unglued and said, no, we're not limiting. Why aren't you this was his quote, why aren't you at the 7-Elevens? Why aren't you at Home Depot? Why aren't you at the farms? Yeah. That's where most of the migrants are. So if you're just looking for migrants with criminal records, you're limiting how many you're going to get. So he is and what they were saying is, well, we didn't think that that's what we were supposed to be doing. And he said, oh, yes, you are. So I think that what you're seeing now over this past week is a shift in policy on these deportations, ICE raids, to where they are now going to job sites, and we're seeing that more and more. They're going
to courthouses.
Sites.
They're getting people who are going for their hearings.
That's right. And this is going to have, these are the kind of deportations that are going to have an impact on the economy. So I often hear Democrats focusing on the humanitarian side of deportations, and I completely understand that. But there's also an economic side to this too.
Sure.
That
which Republicans should be more interested in.
This is going to hurt the economy.
The Guardian was reporting this morning on internal agency emails that said senior U.S. immigration officials over the weekend instructed rank-and-file officers to turn the creative knob up to 11 when it comes to enforcement, including by interviewing and potentially arresting people they called collaterals. Officers were also urged to increase apprehensions and think up tactics to push the envelope, one email said, with staff encouraged to come up with new ways of increasing arrests and suggesting them to superiors. If it involves handcuffs on wrists, it's probably worth pursuing, another message said.
Yeah, and I know that Miller was just asked the other day about the agriculture, where he was just asked, I think it was him, where he said they was confronted with the fact that 40% of the agriculture workers in the United States are migrants.
Yeah.
40%.
Yeah.
Think about that. That's our food supply.
Yeah.
Okay, 40%. And they asked him about that. They said, well, don't you think that that is going to have a significant impact on our food supply and our food prices? And he said, I don't care. Deport them all. So this is very different than the messaging that like Republicans in Congress and Trump are putting out there, that, oh, we're just rounding up criminals. Well, no, now you're rounding up people that are, picking vegetables.
We warned this would happen. I seem to remember last week and the week before, I said that, they're starting initially with, people doing illegal border crossings. Then they'll open that, extend that reach. And eventually it'll be all minorities, people of color, gay people, and eventually the Jews. This is a Nazi tactic. This work that they're doing supposedly is ethnic cleansing. There's nothing more than that. And these individuals like Homan and Miller, this is who they are. You can see it when they talk. They actually get pleasure from this.
And, Marco Rubio is now talking about not, capping student visas at a certain number of foreign students. So sure, it's an across the board effort, but, there's so many layers to this. So, while Trump is claiming that, the economy is going to boom and we're going to grow our way out of debt, you're deporting a big chunk of the workforce at the same time.
This question was asked to Caroline Leavitt at the White House press briefing. Let's take a look at her response.
Thanks a lot, Caroline. I want to bring it back to the way you began your briefing, talking about the president's mass deportation program and his priorities. 40% of crop farm workers in the U.S. are undocumented, and that's according to the Agriculture Department. Do they have a carve-out in terms of the president's mass deportation program?
The president and the Trump administration have been very clear. If you are in the country illegally, you are subject to deportation.
Is there any concern that, given that large number, if that number is correct, 40% of crop farm workers being undocumented, that could impact the food supply here in America if those individuals that obviously help pick crops all across the country are deported en masse?
Again, this administration is focused on deporting individuals who are in our country illegally. It's something we have to do. We cannot allow the previous administration's invasion of our country of illegal immigrants to continue. We just can't have it. And this is a law and order president. As for our farmers and their concerns, they have a president who has their backs and listens to their concerns and hears them. But we also have a legal pathway to come to this country and work specifically for agricultural work. So there's a legal way to do it, and we encourage that legal pathway, and we're currently working on strengthening our legal immigration system for that reason. Sure.
Referring to immigrants as invaders, invasion. That's another Nazi term, which I presume she subscribes to too. I don't know that these people are smart enough to see the correlation between deportations and agriculture. Do you?
No. And I think that there's a lot of Republicans who own farms and meat processing plants and all of that who did not expect that this administration was going to come after their workers. Because remember, because what Trump said is we're going to get the criminals. Right. But what they didn't understand was that when Trump says criminal migrants, he's not talking about migrants who have committed crimes. He views all migrants as criminals. They're criminals because they're here.
Well, he doesn't know what seeking
asylum is. That's why they call them
is.
illegal aliens.
Right.
Right.
seeking asylum falls under international law.
Not to them.
Not to them.
They view it as you're committing a crime by being here, therefore you're a criminal. And I think that there's a lot of businesses around the United States that are owned by Trump voters who did not fully understand that that's what Trump was talking about. Was talking about their workers. In fact, we saw this with Kid Rock last week with his bar in Nashville where ICE went to raid his kitchen because he had a bunch of migrants in there and he sent them home early. So, I mean, even Kid Rock, Trump's greatest supporter, almost had his kitchen staff deported, but he was able to hide them away before the raid.
It is, in its simplest form, this is just racism. Because I've seen Tom Homan say, bad guys. He refers to them as bad guys. Pick up a bad guy. I'm going to get another bad guy. But if you translate it, it's a brown guy or a black guy. That's what he's actually saying. There is this rhetoric, this, I don't know where it comes from, where they see white people as good, brown people as bad. That's just the way they want to have it. That is what making America great again is. I mean, if people haven't worked that out yet by now, they've not been paying attention.
Look, I think if a lot of these migrants were coming from Europe or Ukraine or something like that, they wouldn't care. They wouldn't care nearly as much. Yeah. Right.
Well, we saw that with the Afrikaners coming in. That they welcomed in because they were white. And this really, in its simplest form, and their excuse was they're more likely to assimilate into American life. So there's your answer. Listen, we have to take a break, but I want to come back. We've got a lot more to talk about, including this Joni Ernst story, which I find absolutely fascinating. We'll do that next here on Uncovered. When you start a podcast, it seems like you have to figure it all out on your own. Scripts and setup and filming schedule, logos. It can be super overwhelming, and every day seems to introduce a new decision that needs an answer. When you're starting off with something new, it seems like your to-do list keeps growing every day with new tasks, and that list can easily begin to overrun your life. Finding the right tool that not only helps you out, but simplifies everything can be such a game changer. For millions of businesses, that tool is Shopify. Shopify is the commerce platform behind millions of businesses around the world and 10% of all e-commerce in the US, from household names like Mattel and Gymshark to brands just getting started. Accelerate your content creation. Shopify is packed with helpful AI tools that write podcast descriptions, page headlines, and even enhance your product photography. Get the word out like you have a marketing team behind you. Easily create email and social media campaigns wherever your customers are scrolling or strolling. And best yet, Shopify is your commerce expert with world-class expertise in everything from managing inventory to international shipping to processing returns and beyond. If you're ready to sell, you're ready to Shopify. Turn your big business idea into with Shopify on your side. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/uncovered. Go to shopify.com/uncovered. That's shopify.com/uncovered. The weather this time of year can turn on a dime. One minute you're sweating through your shirt, the next you're wishing you brought that jacket with you, especially when you're out and about getting things done in the yard and generally spending more time outside. Fortunately, Mack Weldon has everything you need to stay cool, comfortable, and stylish regardless of the temperature. Their new Tech Linen line combines the easy charm of classic linen with Cool Max technology to help you look and feel your best all season long. Explore polos, sweaters, hoodies, and more at MackWeldon.com and get 25% off your first order with the code UNCOVERED. I love these black t-shirts from Mack Weldon. They've really improved my comfort whilst maintaining my classic look. And the technical fabric means that I stay comfortable all day long. Looking confident doesn't have to mean calling attention to your clothes. Mack Weldon balances classic pieces with updated details to keep you looking sharp. They're not flashy, just classic, always in style, and made from the world's most comfortable performance materials. Give your closet a breath of fresh air for spring. Go to macweldon.com and get 25% off your first order of $125 or more with promo code UNCOVERED. That's MACKWELDON.com. Promo code UNCOVERED. And you can find links to our sponsors in the description below. Okay, Ron, tell me about Joni Ernst. This is the she's not a senator, is she? She's a congressperson.
No,
right?
senator. Yeah, senator.
She's a senator.
Iowa.
Okay.
Yeah.
And she made the mistake of she was doing a town hall, was it? And somebody kind of, there's some toing and froing, and she made the reference, "We're all going to die sometime," which did not go down very well. Tell us a little bit of the backstory before I play her. She basically doubled down on this. She tried to do an apology video, didn't she? Some reason she chose to do it in a cemetery. Nobody really knows what the thinking was there. I'm sure there's some macabre desire to push that point home. But what's your take on this?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is a major screw up by her. I mean, I understand that all these Republicans are getting bombarded with questions about Medicaid, people losing their Medicaid and losing their health insurance under this new Republican plan. And they get annoyed and upset about it. And, she decided to make a very flippant remark of, well, we're all going to die anyway. So what's the big deal if you have?
Yeah, because someone shouted, we're going to die. People are going to die.
People are going to die anyway. Shouted, so it was just kind of like a dumb, stupid, callous remark.
Right.
And obviously a huge firestorm ensued as a result of that. And so then she decided to issue an apology video, which was bad because it was a non-apology apology. It was, when you watch it, you're thinking at first like, oh, she's legitimately like apologizing and sorry for what she said, which is probably the right thing to do. But again, MAGA doesn't apologize. And so she decided to turn it into a farce by just like, at the halfway through the clip, it became pretty obvious that she was mocking the whole concept of apologizing. And so, I mean, we can watch that, but here's the point. The politics of it is this. I mean, MAGA voters, I'm talking about voters who say they only care about Trump and they don't care about the Republican Party. They have no love for or loyalty to the Republicans. They never voted for a Republican until Trump came along. There's a big chunk of the Republican base now that is those voters. And what we have seen is that those voters do not show up unless Donald Trump is on the ballot, which is why Republicans did very well in 2016, 2020, and 2024 around the country, because Donald Trump is on the ballot and those MAGA voters show up to vote for Trump. And while they're there, they happen to also vote for these lower down the ballot candidates. But they haven't shown up in 2018, 2022. And that's why Republicans did very badly, in congressional elections on midterms. And here we are again, heading into a midterm. So you have a state like Iowa, and there's, you take states like Iowa and North Carolina that Republicans have won, but not won by a lot, but they've been winning them. Places also like Arizona and Pennsylvania and Michigan, places like that. And you get those MAGA voters who don't show up because maybe they're pissed off about the Elon thing, the budget, stuff Bannon's saying, and Trump's not on the ballot anyway. So they're already not going to show up. And then you have this somebody like Ernst who makes statements like this about something that directly affects millions of her constituents. And also have to keep in mind, she cast the deciding vote for Pete Hegseth as Secretary of Defense.
Right,
so you have those things swirling around too. Also, you have the fact that Trump doesn't especially like Joni Ernst and is not going to do anything to help her. He's not going to go to Iowa to campaign for her. Why? Because Joni Ernst endorsed Ron DeSantis in the primary. So she's got to be a little bit careful here. I know she's feeling like safe and secure in her Republican state, but it's not that Republican. It's single digits. It's like, it's like plus 7 or 8 points. So in a weird off-year election with if the economy's going bad and she's running her mouth like this could cost her her Senate seat. And by the way, one prominent Democrat, a state rep who was thinking about running, jumped into the race the very next day and said, I'm running because I wasn't sure if I was going to run, but now I'm running. She said this.
We must remind people that, you know, the House is always neck and neck. And so every single seat counts. And that's why the stakes are so high in the politics. Let's take a look at her apology video live from the cemetery in response to saying we're all going to die.
Hello, everyone. I would like to take this opportunity to sincerely apologize for a statement that I made yesterday at my town hall. I was in the process of answering a question that had been asked by an audience member when a woman who was extremely distraught screamed out from the back corner of the auditorium, "People are going to die." And I made an incorrect assumption that everyone in the auditorium understood that, yes, we are all going to perish from this earth. So I apologize. And I'm really, really glad that I did not have to bring up the subject of the tooth fairy as well. But for those that would like to see eternal and everlasting life, I encourage you to embrace my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I mean, she's made a campaign commercial for her opponents, right? So,
right. 100%.
The point is here, yes, we are all going to die, but we don't want to die soon. And we don't want to die because we don't have health care, right? Yeah. I mean, obviously, having good health care prolongs life. When the medical community wasn't very good 100 years ago, people died very young. Infant mortality was high. Pregnancy was playing Russian roulette for women. Obviously, all of that has changed. But if you lose health care coverage, you're going to die sooner. But maybe her, with her 5-star health care, she doesn't really worry about that.
And this is just further proof of what we were saying earlier, that Trump and people in his orbit and MAGA Republicans generally, they just don't care about people. They are in these lawmaker positions for the wrong reasons. They're there for the power and the wealth and the connections. And the idea of making a difference or genuinely wanting to help people or even lower the deficit, whatever your desire to go in. I noticed Joe Walsh, who claimed that he went into politics to, lower the debt, has just joined the Democrats this last 24 hours and just reported a moment ago. Sorry?
It took him a while.
It took him a while. Well,
he's been anti-Trump for like 8 years.
I know. But everybody is welcome,
That's right.
And Karine Jean-Pierre has also just announced that she's leaving the Democrats. That was reported just a few minutes ago. But the point that I'm making is that this MAGA Republican, call it conservative. I mean, maybe you can shed some light on this, seeing as you were a Republican conservative for so long. What is this issue where you just don't really care for people? It's like you pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and if you want to make it, you can make it, and if you don't make it, then you're lazy, and it's your problem, and I don't want to pay for you. I mean, where does that come from?
Yeah, that's it. I mean, it's just a worldview. It's a lack of empathy. I certainly had it when I was younger. Yeah, I certainly had that attitude. Certainly in my 20s and 30s.
But when did it start? Did it come
everybody should be fine. Everybody should be able to make it. Just work harder.
Yeah.
Be more responsible. And you just assume it's sort of like, the way I can equate it is this: like, before you have kids, like, sometimes I would see like a kid misbehaving or behaving badly, and I would think, oh, that's just bad parenting. Like, it's the parent's fault that the kid is behaving that way. But then when you become a parent yourself, you realize that like you can do everything right, and sometimes your kid just does something bad, right? Like it's not the parent's fault. And it's sort of like you have to learn that, and it's something I learned as life goes on. For me, it was, being a criminal lawyer, working with drug addicts, working with people that were born into terrible childhoods where, everything was stacked against them. And seeing that with my own eyes, that some people are born on third base and think they hit a triple. And some people are born in the dugout, and they can't even get up to bat. And so once you some people just have to see that for themselves. And I guess that was me. And some people never see it. And that's Joni Ernst.
And this goes back to what we were saying earlier about how no one really talks about the poor. It's the same thing. It's all connected. It's like, and I often talk about the marketing machine of the free world and the greatest country in the world, and really it's that marketeering that has almost prevented people from looking and critiquing and looking at what this country is and what they have here and what it's built on.
Yeah, because I think the attitude is like, we're such a rich country, and we have all this economic opportunity. Therefore, if you fail to succeed, there must be something wrong with you, and it's on you. Fault.
Yeah,
that's the attitude. Sure.
Yeah, it's literally the opposite of Europe. Literally the opposite worldview. So interesting. Okay, talking about aging and end of life and everything that goes with that, I want to talk about for a second Jake Tapper and this news. His book about Biden and saying that he was mentally compromised. This has really backfired, hasn't it, in quite a big way. I don't want to spend too much time on this because I don't really like to give him any airtime, to be honest, because I think he's a terrible person. But this is interesting, isn't it? And also CNN's ratings have kind of gone through the floor because of it. And people are literally deserting the channel.
Yeah, well, this is the interesting thing for me. Like I said all along, I don't care about Jake Tapper writing a book, and I don't care he wants to write a book about Biden being senile or whatever. Like, I don't care, and I don't care if people buy it. Like, that doesn't really matter to me. What I was upset about was CNN and how they handled it and how they're covering it 24 hours a day. And by the way, how this has also led to congressional hearings, which James Comer is now going to be holding on this. It's led to basically a 24-hour news cycle. Look, if you watch any Fox show right now, today, half the show will be about Joe Biden, cognitive decline. Even right now, it's just nonstop. So this book has provided content, anti-Biden, anti-Democrat content for Republicans. It's played right into their hands, and it's an incredible distraction from what is happening right now with the Trump administration. That's always been what has infuriated me, is that at a time when we have this madman lunatic destroying our country, all this airtime and stuff is being devoted to Joe Biden and whether he was cognitively fit a couple years ago, right? And so I was always curious. I've been checking every day the ratings, like, because the CNN has devoted such an incredible amount of time to this subject. I was wondering, how is this going to affect their viewership? Is this going to have an impact? Is it going to hurt them? So it may help Tapper sell books individually, but is it going to hurt the network that they went all in to promote his book? And the first ratings, because ratings are always like a couple weeks behind, 3-4 weeks behind. And the first ratings are now really out from that time period when Tapper and CNN went all in, and they're putrid. I mean, their ratings are in the toilet. They've gone downhill, not just Tapper's show, but all the shows.
Right. It's very interesting. I really do think media ownership plays a big part in this, of course, and we have to remember CNN changed hands, and various diktat always comes from the top with the corporate media. It just does. Lawrence O'Donnell, though, on the other channel, MSNBC, had something to say about it. Let's take a look.
Needless to say, Donald Trump is the only president in history who can publicly embrace and accept and believe such insanity without immediately provoking a rush of questions by the White House press corps and news organizations around the world about the sanity of the American president, which means that the insanity of the current American president is now officially taken for granted in the news media. No huge banners on the cable news network that recently devoted itself to the issue of presidential mental acuity. That network did not dare devote itself to the mental acuity of Donald Trump. That network decided that the mental acuity of Joe Biden last year is a more important story now.
And the point that he makes is Biden never got us into crazy trouble, crazy debt, didn't fall out with our allies, didn't, start multiple wars. Gaza was relatively stable. It's like things...
Trade wars.
Things have got so out of control under Trump, and yet they're looking to Biden, who, to all, you can say what you want about him. He wasn't a dictator. He didn't get us into any hot water. And Trump has just blown it. The world is mourning America right now.
And I think that the residual effect of Joe and Mika going down to Mar-a-Lago many months ago, but still that had an impact on MSNBC's ratings, which went down.
Yeah, that was
and then, Rachel Maddow kind of propped it back up a little bit when she came back for 100 days, right? But then she left. Jen Psaki took over that spot, and her ratings are very bad. They went straight downhill when Maddow left.
Yes.
The only primetime cable news show between CNN and MSNBC that has gone up in the ratings is Lawrence O'Donnell's show.
That's because it's a really good show, and he's a professional.
And listen to what he just said, too.
Yeah.
He's not with all that bullshit. No. You're not going to be, he's not going to be having Jake Tapper on to sell his book on his show.
And I like Jen Psaki, but she's not a host. She's not a TV journalist. She
I think that's true.
Yeah. But anyway, Biden's a clone, Ron. I mean, it wasn't even the real Biden. He's animatronic. I mean, don't take my word for it. This is actually the language of the president of the United States claiming that Donald Trump, that Joe Biden is animatronic. I mean, this is what it's come to now, where he's effectively posting that the guy is a robot.
So, Trump has posted these QAnon conspiracies for years on Truth Social. And before the election, the media never paid attention to what he posted on Truth Social. I used to post the stuff all the time, but for the most part, media never covered it. It was always our complaint that they never covered the crazy. So when Trump posted this new one, of course, finally some mainstream media actually covered it. But Fox, as you can see here, Fox of all networks actually covered something Trump did that was crazy. Now, they didn't really spend any broadcast time on it, but they at least covered it on their website. So I thought that was a very interesting moment because Trump has done this crazy stuff before and they've completely ignored it. So they actually covered this one, which was a bizarre. Yeah.
Well, they were probably told
Biden was assassinated in 2020
Yeah.
and that there was a robotic clone
Yeah.
that was propped up to be president for the last 4 years. He's posted this kind of stuff before.
I mean, maybe
it's just
it's
nobody
true,
ever
Ron.
pays attention.
Maybe that explains Biden's gate. He was plugged into the mains.
It was robot Biden.
It was robot Biden. That's right.
Yeah.
That's why he fell off a bike on a beach, because robots can't ride bikes. They're also talking about the auto pen. They're obsessed with this auto pen. And Trump posted, with the exception of the rigged presidential election of 2020, the auto pen is the biggest political scandal in American history. For those that don't know, the auto pen is a technological device that enables the president to sign documents from afar when they're away or Camp David or, just not where the document is. That's basically what it is, right? And all presidents have used it going back decades.
So put that back up and look at the timestamp.
Okay. 2:28 in the morning on, that was this morning, 2:28.
So he hadn't posted anything all day yesterday.
Yeah.
And we were talking about it. We were like, this is really strange because Trump hasn't posted anything in like 24 hours. And by the way, hasn't been seen in public in like 5 days.
Well, maybe he was using an auto pen from his hospital bed, and that's what made him think of it. So, twist everything around with Trump. Projection talks about Biden.
He's just disappeared off the map for like the last 5 days. Now, I know usually when I mention that, Democrats are like, well, that's good. We're not complaining. But it is unusual for him to kind of drop out of sight. Yeah. And it leads the conspiracy theorists amongst us to begin to speculate as to what is happening behind is he sick? Is he ill? Is there something wrong with him? Did he get a black eye? We don't know. But then he pops up at 2 a.m. and posts this auto pen conspiracy. And my first thought was he's just trying to like find something to distract from the Elon Musk stuff, which is all blowing up. But at the same time, no, this is very serious. James Comer is all over Fox about this, that they intend to conduct a major investigation. Here we go again with Comer's committee, where they're going to try and challenge in court some of Biden's executive orders and his pardons on the grounds that his staff was using auto pen to do it because, of course, Biden, was a robot and not real. So, the auto pen was running the country. So this is actually like quite serious that I think they are going to challenge some of the executive orders based on the fact that Joe Biden did not personally sign them.
Well, good luck with that, because
it's going nowhere, but this is a distraction. And I often have Democrats like scold me, don't get distracted by this or that, and I'm not distracted. I can cover many things at the same time. Trust me, I'm not distracted, but this is a distraction, a calculated distraction.
I also find it so frustrating that it just exposes how little interest people have in humanity and the humanity of aging as well. That people can't tell the difference between someone getting old and somebody who is suffering from dementia. When Trump is clearly displaying signs of dementia, literally hasn't got a clue what's going on. And that's why I'm pissed with Jake Tapper, because it's just, as you said, the country has fallen to fascism. There may never be a legitimate election ever again, right? People are frightened to protest for fear of being arrested. And yet, Joe Biden's retired. Give the guy a break. Literally devoted he's got cancer, and he devoted his life to public service, both as a public defender, as a senator, as a vice president, and as a president. And that's the guy you go after? Do me a favor. This is unfortunately the America that you're living in. I want to talk quickly about the tariffs, because Trump announced today that, tariffs on steel is 50%, is it? Is that the number?
Yeah, 50%. It hit today. I really thought he was going to chicken out on these, but he didn't.
I mean, is this not him just like flexing his muscles again when the news cycle doesn't suit him? He's like, right, I'm going to do something super authoritarian just to kind of, score some publicity points?
Sort of. I mean, he was announcing the U.S. on Friday, the U.S. steel acquisition by Nippon Steel, which the Biden administration was blocking that sale.
Hire American,
right?
Japan. Yeah.
So he went there for like the little press conference, and he's getting some pushback from some Republicans who aren't happy that U.S. steel is being sold to a Japanese company, right? And some of the Fox hosts are even not thrilled about this deal.
Right.
So he announces out of the blue, this again shocked everybody. Nobody saw this coming. There was no one. He consulted with no one in the steel industry, any business leaders. He just dropped this bomb on Friday that on Wednesday, he is going to impose 50% tariffs on all steel and aluminum imports. Now, think about how this is so significant that I thought, oh, he's going to back off of this, right? Because 47% of our aluminum is imported and 23% of our steel is imported. Now, next time you go to a grocery store or Target or Home Depot or anywhere, walk around and look at every place you see steel or aluminum and think about the cost of that going up 50%. Yeah. The first company that came out and hit the panic button was Campbell's Soup, right? Because their cans are made out of this stuff.
Yep.
So their cost of their cans just went up 50%.
Doesn't some of the steel come from Canada, though?
We get steel primarily from Canada, Mexico. We also get steel from Brazil and Germany. A lot of it comes from Europe, especially the aluminum comes from Europe,
right?
UK as well. Yeah. So yes. What this does is, yes, it will help. It will force U.S. companies to buy more steel from American companies, but American companies can't produce enough steel to satisfy the demand. Right. So it's literally going to drive up the cost of almost everything in the United States. Everywhere you see metal, that's the cost of that is going up. So I really thought he was going to back off of that today, but he did not. He signed the order last night and it went into effect today. Now, this is a lagging thing. It's something you're really not going to feel the pain of this for several months, because a lot of these companies like Campbell's have an inventory built up. Yeah. But once that's gone, bad times are going to hit.
The reason I asked about Canada was because Mark Carney has come out and been very explicit about America, not coming after us and trying to realign with other nations and not rely on America anymore. And I was thinking maybe Trump saw that on television and was like, okay, I'm going to hit Canada, and this is how I'm going to go about it. Do you think that there's any kind of retribution here?
No, I don't. I think he got caught up in the moment of the steel deal, and he was looking for a way to make people who were objecting to the deal happy by, saying, well, I'm going to protect U.S. steel workers, even though we're selling the largest steel producing company in America to Japan. Yeah. We're still going to protect our American steel workers. So it was an attempt to pander to a few thousand workers in the steel industry, while hurting millions of other Americans and other companies who need to buy steel.
We had a similar thing in the UK recently where I think the Japanese tried to buy British steel. And Keir Starmer famously, just a few weeks ago, kind of got up and said, British steel is not for sale. And it was, people loved it. It was actually one of the few things he's done that has been popular in recent weeks. Let's take a look at Caroline Levitt dealing with this question in the press room earlier.
Thanks, Caroline.
You're welcome.
You've got U.S. business leaders begging for certainty. So why did the president suddenly decide to hike tariffs on steel and aluminum again?
You also have U.S. business leaders begging to meet with this president and begging to come to the White House to talk to him, because they know that he is a negotiator in chief, that he's making good deals on behalf of the American worker and the steel worker in particular when it comes to the steel and aluminum tariffs, which he discussed in his speech at length at Pennsylvania, and the need for them. And
begging. What a great way to do business, to come and have people begging you to do
begging
deals.
Him to reverse his decisions.
Yeah.
Or for carve outs.
Yeah.
And I think it was a really bad choice for her to get Michael Jackson's nose, by the way. I think that she looked, again, it's another situation. We talked about this MAGA face,
MAGA face, yeah.
She was a beautiful woman. She looked great before, but she went in and got to maybe Michael Jackson's surgeon and got that
nose. When did this happen? Did I miss this?
What?
Has she had
Yeah, well, look at the before and after pictures.
She had
you
a
look at her
rhinoplasty.
nose. She's got Michael Jackson's nose.
I had no idea.
Yeah. So it's just like I don't know why she did that. I don't know why these MAGA people get all these surgeries.
It's probably gifts, you know.
When they look fine, like they look fine as they are. Like why are they doing this? But I don't know.
It's the look.
I digress. I mean,
yeah.
But yeah, the point is that, you know, look at how she answers questions. It's like everything reverts back to like Trump is a god, Trump is the king, and we all should worship Trump.
Yeah.
No matter what the question is about.
Meanwhile, he hasn't done a single decent deal since he got into office, and he certainly can't end the war in Ukraine, which he promised to do in 24 hours. Talking of which, we should mention Steve Bannon has an opinion on this as well. This was connected to Lindsey Graham's trip to Ukraine. Just tell us about this before I play the clip.
Oh, well, you know, this is interesting because when Ukraine launched the attack on the Russian bombers, you know, Trump has not said anything about this, but there were a lot of the pro-Putin MAGA supporters who obviously were upset. And so what of course, they're parroting the Russian propaganda, which is like, this is an escalation. They're trying to start World War III.
Yeah.
So this happened while Lindsey Graham was in Ukraine. Coincidentally, well, they would say not coincidentally, but it actually, the operation happened when Lindsey Graham was over there with Dick Blumenthal. It was like a bipartisan delegation of Republican and Democratic senators went over there. And then this happens. And so what a lot of the MAGA people believe is that Lindsey Graham authorized this. Lindsey Graham was somehow behind the Ukrainian attack on behalf of like the deep state in America. You know, Lindsey is their operative, and he went over there to greenlight this attack. In other words, this is something that they've been wanting to do for a long time, but they were being prevented from doing it for whatever reason. But Lindsey Graham went over there and authorized it. So yeah, this is basically Steve Bannon saying like, when Lindsey Graham gets back into the country, he should be arrested and prosecuted for treason for trying to instigate World War III.
Let's take a look.
I think the National Security Council's got to step in here. I don't know why Ratcliffe's saying we're not getting rid of any CIA guys. Something's very, very, very wrong here. Either, number one, if the White House didn't have a heads up, that to me should be, you should condemn this attack today. You should say we're pulling all support today. And you should tell Lindsey Graham, get on a plane here, dude, and get back and stop stirring the pot. Okay? And you should put a notice to the guys in the Senate. We're already $1 trillion. The big, beautiful bill, you know, and you're talking a lot of smack over the Senate. We're going to cut. Do not add any money, because this is what Lindsey Graham's saying. The House and the Senate are going to add big dollars for Ukraine. Not happening. We should, if we did not know about it, let's take that as his face. If they didn't give us a heads up on it, that's dragging us in it. They did a strike 3,000 miles into Russia. As we said last week when Mert said, oh, we got, you know, the ability to hit deep, we got sign of America supports that. There was no verification of that. I don't believe. I never saw any official verification of that.
This is another example of what we were talking about earlier, of where Bannon kind of sits in his own space, right?
Yeah. And by the way, they were also upset at a comment that Lindsey Graham made, which was throwing shade at Trump while he was in Ukraine. What he said after the attack was he was meeting, it wasn't with Zelensky, but it was with some senior military Ukrainian officials. And he said, well, somebody said you didn't have any cards. You didn't have the cards. He said, well, obviously you had a bunch of cards. Well, that's what Lindsey said. Well, who was the one who said Zelensky didn't have the cards? Donald Trump. So he's actually like making fun of Donald Trump in Ukraine. So that's actually what caused Bannon to say that Lindsey should have his passport revoked and not be allowed back into the United States.
I mean, let them fight. Let there be infighting. It just, you know, what you want is you want splits and factions, and you want them to lose seats. I mean, that's really, you know, the order of the day. We only have a minute left, so I want to finish with a little moment of levity from Mike Lindell. Could you have guessed that I was going to end with this guy? He's in the middle of his Dominion legal case at the moment, isn't he? This is him outside the trial, kind of ranting and raving. Here he is.
But it was also my evidence. So when I come in, I needed that evidence. When you delete evidence, it's like throwing a gun in a river. That's called spoliation in any court case. They threw away my evidence. You think I wasn't upset about that too? But no, I wasn't worried about some court case down the road. I was worried about, I can't believe the cover-up, that they're covering up our elections, starting here in Colorado. That was.
Yeah, he was blaming Satan for the whole thing.
This is the Rudy Giuliani trial, like all over again, where Rudy is outside the courthouse, saying, "Well, we're going to prove the election was stolen, and we're going to get in there and show them." And then, his lawyers, meanwhile, are inside the courtroom saying, "No, we're not doing
and
any
they
of
sit
that."
quietly.
It's the same thing is happening in Lindell's trial, where Lindell is claiming like he's going to prove to this jury the election was stolen, he's going to be vindicated, while his lawyers are in there saying, okay, he lied, but he thought he was telling the truth. That's the defense. So yeah, it's just like what they say to like the media and their supporters is one thing. What they say in the courtroom is something totally different.
And it's the same for Trump as well. It's just further proof that so much of this rhetoric is performative and it is just playing to the gallery. And at the heart of it, they are sore losers. Okay, we have to finish, but good fun today. Thank you so much. We're trying to keep our spirits up in the in the face of the situation that this country faces. So I'm grateful to you for the information, for your expertise. We'll do it again next Wednesday. If you want to download the audio podcast, you can grab that wherever you get yours later tonight, and we'll come back next week and uncover some more. Thanks a lot, Ron.
All right. See you next week.